Bound by Game Freak is just another one of those games that's in the weird position of, well, we just haven't heard from it in a while. Added to your Animal Crossings and your Luigi's Mansions. We're all just kind of sitting around wondering where they are. Why hasn't anyone mentioned them in a while? It almost feels like we should start throwing out some milk cartons with the names on the back of them. We still don't know how far along Town is, but thanks to a new screenshot by Famitsu, we can kind of tell that, well, at least the game has changed from what it previously was. The initial reception of this change, admittedly, wasn't great. It wasn't too bad, it was kind of mixed, but the one thing that I did take away from it is that people thought, and I kind of got to agree with them here, it looks a little bit cluttered. Now that I've had the chance to kind of compare the old to new though, I'm looking at this and going, it may still look kind of cluttered, but it actually looks a lot more fresh and a lot more pleasing on the eyes than the old version did. And if you haven't seen my previous video in Town, make sure to check that out. I'll leave a thing there or the description below or something, you'll be able to find it. At first glance here, it still looks kind of similar. Like, sure, a lot has changed, but the same core mechanics you can kind of see have come across. Especially when it comes to the attacks. You can see here that we're surrounded with our selection of attacks, and so is the enemy. And if you missed the last video we did, our assumption here is that this is going to play like a bit of a card game, in the way that you and your enemy will both choose an attack, or let's consider it a card, and those two attacks will actually go against each other. In other words, the defense value and the attack values are going to collide with each other and determine who wins that battle. Looking at this new screenshot, it's kind of got me convinced that maybe the attack cards here that we're seeing, for the enemy at least, are literally parts of the enemy's body. Or at least the parts that are attacking. Like, you can see one here that kind of looks like a claws. So I'm guessing if we destroy that card, the enemy won't be able to use that claw attack anymore. Now on our side, we still seem to have defensive and offensive cards. By this I mean we have yellow and red. They are the defensive and offensive. Now we're not sure why that matters yet, considering even defensive and offensive cards both have attack and defense values. They're just kind of scaled a bit differently. But maybe it plays out like something like Yu-Gi-Oh! Where like you could lay a card in the attack position or the defensive position, and that affects whether, I don't know what that affects in Yu-Gi-Oh! It's been a long time, but it affects something. So maybe that's what it is. One thing that's blatantly obvious here is that, well, we have more attacks than we did before. It could be that we're further into the game, or it could just be a new change they've made that you always have this many attacks. Now for the big change here with the attacks is, well, the crystals. You notice that in the old one, I mentioned that you use crystals to be able to do certain attacks. In other words, it would either cost like 3 crystals or 4 crystals to do whatever attack you want to do. Now it seems quite possible that maybe just the special attacks will cost crystals. As you can see here, the cost has quite likely been moved to the middle of the actual icon. And I believe above the selected attack is how many crystals we actually have. Or it could just be another indication of how many it's going to use. How we get more of these crystals is still pretty unclear at this point, but there is one kind of indication here, although I'm not sure how it would work. In the status area down the bottom, you'll notice there's like a crystal shaped icon that says LV or level. Now maybe it's when that fills up, or maybe that's just indicating how many you actually have, but that certainly has something to do with the crystals. You can see the same shape. Now we get to go into something a little bit more juicy here, because where the crystals were has changed completely into just 3 hearts, which we could probably consider our health and the enemy health on the other side. When you compare this to the old version, both you and the enemy actually had 30 health. So something there has certainly taken a major change. It's most likely that when you win an attack round, you'll just lose a heart, where they were trying to work it out in like percentages of health before, which must have been more confusing for them. The health certainly isn't the only thing that's been moved or just completely gone. If you notice here with the old version again, the SP that both you and your enemy had, well, that's just scrapped completely, that's gone. Same with this thing called a voltage meter, which laid under the enemy's health. Even the entire enemy HUD, which was laying up the top corner here, it's just gone, it's completely gone, and it looks so much cleaner for it. Continuing on with that cleanness that just comes with this new design, take a look at the descriptions. It used to come up next to the actual attack. Now down the bottom corner, you both have the enemy's description and your description. We can tell this because they actually line up with the attacks. You've noticed that, now I don't read any Japanese, but certainly the characters are the same on both sides for the enemy and yours. And there's even more that has been moved. If we take a look over here at the info section down the bottom right and the dwellers and terrain down the bottom left, well, they have both been moved as well. The info is now, well, just a smaller icon, and the dwellers and terrain is actually at the top corner. Now, of course, as I mentioned, I don't read any Japanese, so I had to use a translator to kind of, not a human translator, a machine translator, which did a really bad job, but I kind of got the idea of what these might be up the top corner. So going from left to right, we have residence, mix, inner head, I don't know what that is, and terrain certification. So as you can tell, my thing just, it failed me. It very much failed me, but we can kind of get an idea that residents would certainly be the people that we summon, the what are they called? Dwellers. And considering the terrain option is now in option 4, we can kind of tell they separated that from residents, I guess because they freed up a button. Also option 2, which is mix, I'm guessing is items, and option 3, in a head, yeah, I don't know what that is. I think that's my translator failing me, but your guess is as good as mine. To top the list off here, there's just a bunch of stuff that is either new or just wasn't shown off before in the past. Or possibly they just changed the wording of some of the old stuff. Now you can instantly see BP below the crystal level here. I don't think that stands for badge point from Paper Mario, though I kind of wish it did. One of the attacks here actually has its stats boosted up. Now, I don't know what would cause this effect. It might have been like a villager came in and boosted it, or it could just be maybe a weakness or something else in the battle, but it's certainly something we haven't seen before. There's also this new little icon on the enemy attacks, which kind of looks like a skull alien head, I don't know, but it's something, and it's something that is different and new, and I don't know what it means. And lastly, if you look at our attacks, we have a exclamation mark attack, which is just a grey one, not red or yellow, which, again, no idea what that is. But it doesn't cost anything, it doesn't really do much, but it does something, obviously. That does it for all the new details I've seen throughout the screenshot, but there is a couple more things that I would love just to mention here while we got the opportunity. In the previous video I mentioned that there was a bit of an animal theming going on. In other words, you could kind of see like, there was an area that just had a lot of snakes, and there was one house that had rams on it. But my conclusion was, well, it seemed very snake themed. Upon further inspection here, I'm kind of thinking that maybe it's themed areas. In other words, the main part of the town is maybe themed around snakes, or this part that we've seen in the old stuff, and the area near the entrance might be themed around these rams. As I was saying, even in the new footage here, you can see that green sign, and then if you look at the background there, you'll see the actual main part that I'm talking about with all the snakes. Anyway, just a theory that I thought might be worth mentioning, and would make sense to like easily differentiate the areas of the town. Now the big question that we have to answer at the end of this video is, do I still think that it's coming in 2019? Maybe? Like, I'd like to believe so, because personally I'm quite hyped for this game and I'd love to see it come out in 2019. The Famitsu leak, or it wasn't really a leak, the screenshot that they showed us, that kind of has me believing that it's possible. It's certainly possible. Like, it seems it's further along than it was before, and it's looking really good now. It's quite possible it certainly could still be coming. But the thing that kind of then makes me go, oh, maybe not, is the fact that, well, we just had a press conference, and they said bugger all about this. This is a perfect opportunity for the company just to say, here is this, look at it. And they didn't. Although I might have to stand corrected there. I'm not sure if the press conference is simply for Pokemon and that is it. They weren't going to mention anything else outside of that. So it's quite possible that's the reason that we didn't see that. And I think E3 would be the tell. If we don't see anything on this game at E3, then I'm not liking his chances. Anyway, if you haven't watched my previous video on this, make sure to go watch that, because it's, I don't know, it's interesting. You see some of the stuff that I possibly got wrong, as well as just a bunch of other cool information that I went over with this as well. And thank you for watching. Now, if you enjoyed what happened here, make sure to hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, be very much appreciated. I think that I do that in a different order every time. Anyway, remember, for great Nintendo entertainment, you can count on me. These end screens are sometimes sponsored by patrons, such as Jacob here. Now, Jacob actually asked me today, what's it like living in SA or South Australia? And is it basically boring, like most people say it is? Kinda? I don't know. I'm really bad judging this. I like living in SA because, first of all, I live like outside of the city, like 40 minutes out of the city. And then like I try to avoid the city as much as possible, when probably most of the hustle and bustle actually happens, because I'm a bit of a country bumpkin and I don't know, I hate the city. Ugh, city. So yeah, I don't know really what to say about that, but I enjoy living here. I find the quiet life enjoyable, and there is stuff to do. If you want to find something, you can certainly go around. And it's not like we're covered in theme parks and stuff like that happening all the time, but like there's stuff to do. I think there's a filming of some big movie coming up soon. I don't know. Mortal Kombat. That was it. Mortal Kombat. I think that was it. Anyway, that was being filmed here, and that's about as exciting as it gets. So, I don't know. I find it fun. It's good for me. That's it. Goodbye.